Hello again. The Fantasy Sultans are here for week number 3. He's the Hall of Famer, Mike Sheck. I'm Tripp Rogers. And I don't know. You've started off the season with 2 games. And in some cases, you're 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
Like us in the Rat League.
Like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs. Go ahead. Keep going. Keep naming it, buddy.
New York Giants. Carolina Panthers.
There you go. New York Jets. There you go. Oh, yeah. 0-2.
Yeah.
0-2. Now, some people are 2-0. Like me. The fantasy. No, I'm not. I'm 1-1 in Fantasy Sultans, but other leagues 2-0. It's great. Hopefully you took
Daniel
some of our
freaking
advice.
Jones.
What?
Daniel freaking Jones. He is 2-0.
Listen, we need to let. Okay, folks listening to the podcast, we mentioned it once. Well, this became a running joke on our radio show, which is on Sundays on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey and foxsportsnewjersey.com. And this became a running joke during the broadcast. We kept saying that Daniel freaking Jones, and so you can imagine what that was like there. And so anyway, yes, Daniel freaking Jones is. I mean, I saw somebody post on social media, what kind of world do we live in? The Chiefs are 0-2. The Colts are 2-0 with Daniel Jones. And of course, the Giants and Jets are 0-2. There we go. Yes, indeed. All right, moving along. The week 3, and Mike, I think the big story this week is the quarterback injuries. Joe Burrow is gone for a while. It looks as though Jaden Daniels looks like he's going to be able to play. They're saying he's probably going to play with the knee injury that he sustained last Thursday night. It looks like maybe Brock Purdy will be back. But those injuries are really starting to stack up in the quarterback ranks.
Yeah, there's 5 of them that are significant injuries or big-time players that you probably drafted early on in your drafts. And I think that's going to be impacting a lot of players. You talk about Joe Burrow, it's going to sideline his injury for 3 or more months. And the question is going to be now, do you want to keep him on your roster or not? I mean, that's going to be a big option. And you talk about, a big-time player, probably drafted him with the round 3, round 4, round 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. Joe Burrow was drafted. And, this is a player that, we talk about all the time. Injuries are going to happen in fantasy. You just can't predict them. But, this is a huge loss here. But Chase Browning, he did well. 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big question is, how long will that performance continue? And is he going to be a player to trust as a replacement? Or should owners really want to put more trust in somebody else? Maybe you want to put some trust on Russell Wilson of the New York Giants because he delivered a throwback fantasy performance, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. His wide receivers
still lost. Still lost.
Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, they benefited from Wilson's great day that he had. And Cam Scatterbo, yes. Impressive as these performances were. Something to watch, though. The Giants' schedule really doesn't bode well for them. 4 unfavorable matchups this week through week 13. So I think we're going to have to see what happens here. But Russell Wilson may be a quarterback that you may want to spot start. Again, maybe you want put more faith in somebody else, but somebody for more consistency. And let's talk about the comeback player of the week or comeback team of the week. The Detroit Lions, they put up a 52 burger on Chicago. Encouraging because they really didn't impress in Green Bay in week 1 for the opener. The Lions' top 3 scorers combined for 92.5 PPR points. That doesn't even include the electrifying performance from Jamison Williams and a return to the scoreboard from David Montgomery. So if you have some Lions players in week 1, I think you were starting to hit the panic button a little bit. But you've calmed down a little bit now that we're in week 2 and heading into week 3.
And do you think that the Lions were making a statement against their former offensive coordinator? Yes. I mean, did you see that handshake after the game? There was no love lost. It really wasn't. But I will say this. The Lions, I wasn't worried about their offense. I know week one, they didn't look good against the Packers, but listen, the Packers are 2-0. And the Packers, I think you can say they're a surprise team. They have done better than I think people expected. But, let's kind of pump the brakes a little bit because it's still early in the season.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned Russell Wilson and the Giants. Well, listen, Giants play an 0-2 Kansas City team. What makes you think the Giants are going to win this game? Really? What makes you think they're going to? They're not. And and people now are pushing the panic button on Kansas City players. And I'm like, no, don't. I mean, they opened up against the Chargers in the Brazil game. And then they played the Eagles. Come on. And it wasn't like the Chiefs were blown out. They lost by one score in each game. So, I mean, I don't think it bodes badly in terms of fantasy, but you do see people, the Chiefs offense looks a little out of sort. You got to wonder. And if you have Rashee Rice, who is sitting out a 6-game suspension, you have to wonder what his coming back is going to do to affect this offense. Because also last week we had, Kareem Hunt on my imports. And you kind of wonder how's that going to affect things going forward. But listen, it's Kansas City Chiefs. They've won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. They've been in 7 consecutive AFC championship games. Somehow, I think they'll be okay. I think they will.
Mm-hmm.
I think they will. They play. Yeah. Hey, listen, they play the Giants Sunday night. They play the Giants. They play the Giants, and what can you say? And the other part I'm going to say is in terms of fantasy performances, I don't think we saw vintage fantasy performances Monday nights. If you were a Brock Bowers owner, you were happy that he played, not happy with his production. Yeah, it counts us in that because he did not do that well. But again, he didn't really practice much last week. He'll have a full week of practice, and we will see what happens with Brock Bowers going forward. But again, I also, I like Geno Smith as his quarterback. I think the Vegas Raiders are going to be good. I think that Chip Kelly offense is going to cook, and I really think that Bowers, and let's not forget about Ashton Genty, who I think people are very satisfied with, even if it was not a stellar performance in Monday night game. Speaking of stellar, always a stellar portion of our podcast every week, which people wait with bated breath to hear. Import exports. Mike, you start.
Yeah, we'll begin with Atlanta with running back Tyler Algier. And what can I say about Algier? One of the best backups in fantasy. I mean, I don't really think he gets enough credit for the work he puts in. Last week against Minnesota, he carried for 76 yards. No, he didn't outrush Bijan Robinson, but he did get one more touchdown than he did. So Algier really not always playable if Bijan is healthy. But you know what? We know that Bijan is a workhorse. He's going to face the Panthers defense this week. And I've said they have underwhelmed. And I think that is an understatement. Might be a sneaky pickup to pick up Tyler Algier this week. I'm going to stay with the backs, move to LA and talk about Blake Corum from the Rams. Now, keep in mind, not a great week on the waiver wire for the running backs. You got to fill your bench spots with high upside handcuffs. This pick makes a lot of sense. Corum logging 5 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown in week 2. Oh, by the way, 3 of those carries came in the fourth quarter, which is something worthy of noting here. Kyren Williams really didn't impress. I think this is an interesting situation to watch here. If I recall, Sean McVay did the same thing a few years back to Cam Akers when he rolled with a hot hand in Kyren Williams. Could he roll with a hot hand at some point with Blake Corum? Something to watch here. We know McVay has had that history of benching or sending, like he did with Cam Akers. They traded him away. So we'll have to see what happens there, but definitely something to watch. All right, I'm going to go to a wide receiver who's been a decent flex play over the last 2 games, Cedric Tillman of the Cleveland Browns. Now, he's averaged 3.5 receptions, 37 yards. The most encouraging news is Joe Flacco has attempted 45 passes in back-to-back games. And when any team is playing from behind, the state of passing attempts are going to go up. And that's clearly what is going on in Cleveland right now. I think they'll be playing from behind again this week. They're going to be playing Green Bay. Tillman would be a nice import. You're looking for a tight end? Look no further than Zach Ertz from Washington. Over the past 2 weeks, Ertz has been targeted 13 times, 9 catches for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, you mentioned it. Whether or not he plays, I don't think it matters because I still think he's going to see his share of the workload for the Commanders. He's an import. And finally, we're going to shift to the exports. Now, I'm always careful about exporting players early in the season, but I think we're getting into the conversation of benching Mark Andrews in Baltimore. 2 games, 2 receptions, 4 fantasy points. I'll tell you what, I mean, he has not been that go-to tight end for Lamar Jackson in the past few seasons, let alone this season. We're going back to the past few seasons. Derrick Henry, he carried the ball a lot in week 1. Not much of a factor in week 2. Zay Flowers, he performed consistently well over the past 2 weeks. D-Hop putting in some nice numbers. Mark Andrews, not so much. I really wouldn't send him to waivers yet, but you might want to consider benching him and picking up somebody else on the waiver wire. Or, like I mentioned, Zach Ertz, he would be a good pickup. Or maybe somebody else is on your roster already and you want to swap them out for, I just think that I'm not feeling the confidence with Mark Andrews. And I know last season we questioned his performance. He's kind of like become the Kyle Pitts of fantasy for the tight ends.
I was just going to bring up Kyle Pitts. What kind of world we live in? Mark Andrews not doing diddly, and Kyle Pitts is Mr. All World. Well,
the old switcheroo.
Yeah, switcheroo. That's right. I will do the opposite. Think the opposite. And I'm going to pick up on that. One of my imports is going to be Isaiah Likely. Now, listen, he is going to be coming back. He was injured, probably didn't go in your draft, or if he was drafted, it was late. He may still be on the waiver wire, and that is true. And Mark Andrews is off to a rough start for the 2nd year in a row. And Likely was the guy who picked up the slack, and he was a fantasy monster last year. He will probably play this week. He's missed the first 2 games, and he is going to give you an option. If you're looking for that tight end, I mean, Isaiah Likely is a guy for the Ravens, and he warrants definitely a thought. And again, importing him as a second tight end, not a bad idea. You can then do the old switcheroo, again, depending on matchups, because remember, Baltimore is going to have their share of tough games because they'll play a first square schedule because of last year. All right, let's go to the quarterback side. I can't believe I'm saying this either. Sam Darnold, come on down, Seattle Seahawks. He looked much more like the guy who was in 2014 in the Week 2 win over Pittsburgh. He had tossed 2 interceptions, but yet 295 yards, 2 TDs. He is somebody who is on a new team this year. And again, we said this during our fantasy previews. Which Sam Darnold shows up? Is it the guy who played the first 17 weeks of the season, or is it the guy who showed up the last week of the season and the first game of the playoffs? Well, I think we have the answer. The schedule also very appealing for the Seahawks since they'll have upcoming matchups with New Orleans and also at Arizona. So you may want to think about Sam Darnold, especially if you're looking for a quarterback or a backup quarterback because of the Joe Burrow situation. And again, Jaden Daniels and Brock Purdy, although Purdy may be back this week. Wide receiver, let's head to Denver. Denver's slot receiver is Troy Franklin, and he won that job in camp. First 2 games. Guess what? He is not doing too badly. He has got 71 yards after the catch. That's 7th in the league. And then he's also, he's done a good job. And again, he's been a surprise. Led Denver's offensive core, receiving core in number of snaps, routes, and targets. 8 grabs, 89 yards receiving. He is somebody that I think you need to think about. He has some value as a wide receiver 3. Also could be a flex value. He's somebody you can pick up. And again, he should be available on your waiver wire, and he would be somebody to grab. All right, wide receivers now. Green Bay Packers, Jalen Reed out for the foreseeable future because of a couple of injuries, not just one, but a couple of injuries. So the Packers receiving core, you've got a couple of options. Romeo Doubs, Mike mentioned as a pickup before on this show. I'm going to go Dontavian Wicks. Again, he'll see his role grow with Reed being out. He was over 50% snaps in week number 2, and he was an encouraging fourth in terms of qualifying wide receivers in this receiving grade so far from Pro Football Focus. He's somebody who could get better, and again, depending on how things go for Green Bay, Dontavian Wicks, if he's available, you're going to want to grab him. Now, I'm going to go to the export side of things, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this one, but export Joe Burrow. And I say this not because Burrow stinks as a quarterback, but do the math. He's not going to be back till mid-December. That is going to be playoff time in most fantasy leagues. So if you hang on to Burrow, you may not be able to use him. And as Mike said earlier on this show, and I agree, if the Bengals have nothing to play for, why are you going to run Joe Burrow out there to try and get him in there? I mean, unless they're playing for something, I don't see any reason for Joe Burrow to play the rest of the year. This is a worse injury than we thought on Sunday. And again, Monday they came through really quick that they were going to operate on this, and he was going to be out for a minimum of 3 months. Now, I want to say this also. I don't think there's going to be a little fall off because Jake Browning is not Joe Burrow, but I think Jamar Chase, I think Chase Brown, T. Higgins, they're all going to be okay. They'll get their fantasy numbers. These guys are monsters. Jake Browning will get on the ball, and Jake Browning did well a couple of years ago. But either put Joe Burrow on your IR position, but the only problem is some leagues only have one IR position, or let him go. And again, let somebody else carry him on the roster, because when you get to the buys, you're going to find that your extra spots are going to fall away, and you're going to need somebody. And at this point, I would say let Burrow go early rather than later, because you could pick up somebody who down the road could pay dividends. So I'm going to take the contrarian view, export Joe Burrow.
You mentioned extra roster spots. I think bench construction is the area where savvy fantasy owners tend to struggle. If you could really master this art, I think you're going to see your fantasy performance do significantly well. I tell you what, I think it goes back to drafting. We said on the draft show, if you have the depth, you could be a little bit more prepared than the others. We're seeing it now with key injuries. If you don't have the depth and your player suffers an injury, then you're left scrambling and you're going to the waiver wire. At least if you have some depth on your team to begin with, you're not being forced to go to the waiver wire each and every week. Or let's just say, I think that everybody should peruse the waiver wire each and every week to see who's available, but you don't want to be forced into a situation. I think it's all about depth on your team. We preach it on the show. We preach it on our draft special. You got to have, it's really a next man up mentality.
And the other part of it is, and we talked in terms of quarterbacks, if your quarterback had a late bye, we said, you don't want to carry one quarterback. And Burrow was one of those guys who had a late bye. So chances are you're going to need it. Again, I don't think it's going to be worth it for you to keep him on the roster. And the other side of it is, even if Joe Burrow does come back, if you're not in the playoffs, it's not going to matter. That's going to be the big thing. And I gotta tell you something. I forgot to mention this, but I'll mention this now because, listen, the fantasy sultans are not infallible. We sometimes make mistakes. And one of the things you got to watch when you do waivers is you've got to make sure that the players go into the slot that you're intending them for. Case in point, last week in one league in Sleeper, there's this little thing you got to push to make sure they go into the starting position when they are, the waiver claim goes through. I guess I didn't have it pushed because I had the Green Bay kicker. on the bench. And I didn't realize it till Friday morning.
Yeah.
So I had to pick up another kicker for the week. So I'd have somebody to kick on Sunday. Yeah. Not one of my better moves. Not one of my better moves. That's all I have to say. Not one of my better moves. Got to give credit to our buddy Mac, who actually listened to the Sultans. Picked up Harold Fanine, tight end, Green Bay, or Cleveland.
Way to go, Mac.
Yes. Smart guy. Mm-hmm. Smart guy. He listens. Yep. He listens to us. He knows he can get better by listening to us if we haven't made the moves before he does. I'm just saying that. That's the way it works out. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Scheck. I'm Tripp Rogers. Always available, fantasysultans@gmail.com. We drop the podcast every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. We'll get you prepared for the weekend. We're giving you the ideas. We're giving you the tips. We're giving you the players that will win you a fantasy league, because we are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.